Prasaraya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Astutyadeshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gora Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Gauranitai Jai Gauranitai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Gurudev Gurudev Jai Gurudev Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol Hare Krishna. I think after Diwali yesterday, everybody's sleeping. We're still celebrating.
It's Kartik Yatra also.
Kartik, yeah.
Maharaj is, I think Kirtan must be ending now, or probably ended.
It just ended, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Didn't have opportunity to join online. I was preparing for our event on Sunday. Oh, more devotees are joining. Wonderful. Okay, we can begin with reading some stories about Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for sharing, Shreyas Prabhu. Would you like to read the first story, please?
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Radhanath Swami cuts a joke. Am I getting old? A thought sneaked into my mind. I was in my car returning from a festival that bubbled with enthusiasm, with young men exuberantly dancing in Kirtan in a style introduced by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a bhakti saint of the 16th century. Through it all, I was feeling the opposite, unenthusiastic and sluggish. Now my intelligence figured out why. Perhaps I was getting old. Slowly, that thought snowballed, and I started feeling older and older and older, way beyond my years. My mind rolled towards old age faster than the tires. Soon, I started imagining difficulties of old age mounting on my frail body. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, I expressed myself to my co-passenger, Radhanath Swami. Quote, I find myself out of the crowd and left out. All the other devotees are so enthusiastic and strong, unquote. He looked really amused by the jokes my mind played on me. But as a remedy, he cut yet another joke. It was a witty one that sobered me up. Quote, those who are young, they are very soon going to become old. But if you are not very enthusiastic, you are very soon going to become young again. Unquote. Wasn't that deep? Written by Dr. Ashok Shetty.
Hare Krishna.
English.
Thank you. Mataji Lakshmi Jaya, would you like to read second story?
Yes, Mataji. Radhanath Swami's Transcendental Play. Through the train window, I watched as the plains of Andhra Pradesh state, India, spread out before me. Hot air wafted in from there, worsening the sweltering heat inside the compartment. Austerities of the pilgrimage have already begun. I sighed. It was the summer of 1988 when I was a budding spiritualist. Though uncertain if spirituality, especially its austere side, was really my cup of tea, I had plucked up enough courage to be on this pilgrimage. My elder brother Dhaval, a practitioner of Bhakti Yoga since 1984, was my inspiration. Now, on this train heading to the holy town of Jagannath Puri, he sat next to me, while Radhanath Swami and the president of ISKCON Chaupati sat on the seat opposite, facing us. I kept my attention outside the window. Dhaval read a book. Radhanath Swami and the president conversed. When brothers take to spirituality, who makes swifter advancement, the elder or the younger? What do statistics say? The president asked Radhanath Swami amidst their conversation. That had now sucked my full attention. I peeked from the corner of my eyes and found Dhaval also distracted into it. We waited Radhanath Swami's response. I don't know about statistics. Casting a glance at the brothers sitting in front, Radhanath Swami continued. But in this case, it is the younger. Struggling to be modest, I restrained my gleeful smile. My mind that reeled with thoughts of austerities moments ago now resolved to nudge higher in Bhakti Yoga. I didn't look at my brother to avoid embarrassing him, yet I felt sorry for him. He had been slogging for over 4 years, yet I had then on, the pilgrimage was an ecstatic experience, and so was practice of Bhakti Yoga. After years of practice, one begins to understand the nuances of spirituality. So now, when I look back, I can imagine Radhanath Swami winking at my brother after making that comparative statement. Certainly, my brother was and still is far more spiritually advanced than I. That statement was only a transcendental ploy to encourage me, and my brother perhaps was also a part of the crime. By Snehal Narendra Dalal. Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Do you want to say something, Mataji? You're on mute.
I thought you wanted to say something.
I did, but you go ahead first.
I was wondering if any of you been with to pilgrimage with Guru Maharaj? Have you been? I really would love to go next year. I'd like to check more information how to do that.
It's too late for me now because
of children?
no, because senior devotees go with Maharaj now. We people like me won't get to go with Maharaj. Yatra, I mean, now there are 10,000 devotees in Yatra. So you hardly see Maharaj except on the stage in the evening talk. But you go with other devotees in groups of perhaps 3,000-4,000. They have 8 groups of thousands of devotees. This story is probably, yeah, this is from 1988, right? When it used to be 20, 50 devotees. And Maharaj would personally guide them and personally lead them and give talks in every holy place personally. Seen pictures of it.
So you think that we'll not be able to see him even if we go to Yatra?
I don't think so. That's what I was thinking.
We would be able to see him, but from far. And sometimes, if we are fortunate, he will be walking and we will be able to see him close. But most of the time, we will be sitting in a pandal, and from there, we watch Maharaj giving the lecture.
Mm. Okay, good to know.
I wanted to share that this uh, I heard Maharaj's lecture of in Rath Yatra in Mumbai, and at that time I had never read that, and first time I heard that. I had read Bhagavad Gita, and Bhagavad Gita, Shri Krishna talks about austerities for advancing in spiritual life, and Shri Krishna also talks about taking difficulties in the beginning and for nectar in the end. But Maharaj shared that the path that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us is nectar in the beginning and nectar in the end. We're feasting, dancing, singing, and uh, and then the later also is nectar. So is nectar now and nectar later. So I remember that instruction from the story. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
Thank you for sharing. Pankajavali, Prabhu, would you like to read?
Yes, Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Radhanath Swami's witty tips for leaders. Everybody has two sides to his or her personality, one of which is the divine. You should focus on the divine side and fan it. Real leadership means to bring the best side of everyone. I cling on to these words spoken by Radhanath Swami whenever I feel cy- cynical about the people I lead. But it's the attitude that we are simply servants working for the welfare of our dependents that takes these words to the level of action. Scouring through Vedic history for good kings, we see every one of them spend the formative years of their lives at the hermitage of a guru, where they engage in menial services as part of their education. Thus, later their kingship stood on the foundation of service attitude. Some years ago, I was introducing a student of one of the premier technological institutes of India, IIT, to Radhanath Swami. He is a topper in his department. Radhanath Swami asked him, "What's the reverse of TOP? Pot. One on top has to wash pot to become a good leader." On another occasion, I was introducing a leader of a project to Radhanath Swami. He is the overall coordinator. Radhanath Swami turned to him and said, "Over all should be taken as all are over us. We are humble servants of those we lead." By Acharya Ratnadas.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji. How should I call you? What is your name exactly?
Yes, Mataji, my name is Pankajavali.
Okay, that's your full name. Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you for reading. Thank you for joining today. Ankit,
Yes, Mataji, I'm there.
Krishna Prabhu, would you like to read?
Yes, Mataji. Radhanath Swami's balancing wit. While we soured Bhakti Yoga during our stay at the monastery in Mumbai, we developed a deep longing to share that experience with others. Prodded by fellow feelings, the three of us, all Americans, first wanted to reach out to our countrymen touring Mumbai. We decided to visit a neighborhood tourist trap, Kuleba, but first we sought blessings from Radhanath Swami. Radhanath Swami's eyes gleamed with joy seeing us exuberant to share the gifts we received. For sharing one's joy with others is the heart of spirituality. He exclaimed, "The three of you remind me of the trio Srinivas Acharya, Narottam Das Thakur, and Syamanand Pandit." Encouraged, we smiled from ear to ear. These were names of renowned saints of the 17th century who pioneered the spreading of Lord Chaitanya's school of Bhakti Yoga. Speaking of the philosophy and glories of bhakti was exhilarating, but disinterested responses demoralized us. Our minds would then find a sanctuary in Radhanath Swami's encouraging words, and that helped us go on with renewed enthusiasm. Gradually, we started finding interested people, while on one hand it boosted our confidence. On the other, we began to imagine halos around our heads. We now felt like Messiah when one brother flew to America to resume his duties, there the two of us went to Radhanath Swami. Narottam Das Thakur has left, I said, remembering Radhanath Swami's comparison of the renowned trio with our trio. Implicit, implicitly, it meant we were indeed of the caliber of Srinivas Acharya and Syamanand Pandit. Seeing the two of you now, I am somehow reminded of Jagai and Madhai. Radhanath Swami's body rocked with laughter. He had punctured our egos in split seconds. Jagai and Madhai were renowned criminals of 16th century India who were eventually delivered by the benevolent Lord Chaitanya. Of course, he didn't mean we were criminals, but through his lambent wit, he conveyed that we weren't as holy as we felt we were. Both enthusiasm and humility are pillars of bhakti yoga, and he knew which needed support when and now to administer that support. Jean Paul.
Hare Krishna. I could imagine Guru Maharaj saying these words and laughing. I just pictured him.
As one disciple was describing Maharaj's laugh, shoulder rocking laugh.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
There was recently this video, right? Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Ankit Prabhu, for reading. I guess we can move to the Journey Home book now. I can read this part. Another day, Gary and I came upon a monastery wherein the monks meditated in catacombs filled with the skeletal bones of their predecessors. In some of these rooms, hundreds of human skulls or skeleton parts were piled high along the walls. In another, the skeleton parts were artistically assembled to make floral designs, furniture, and chandeliers. We asked an old monk sitting beside us to explain. Here, we contemplate the impermanence of the body and its attachments. This helps us to overcome the temptations of the flesh and seek refuge in the kingdom of God. We listened carefully. Deeper in the catacombs, a group of skeletons wearing monk robes pointed to a sign that read, "As you are now, we used to be, and as you are now, we used to be, and as we are now, you will be." Despite these spiritual encounters, the material world continued to pull on me. One afternoon, Gary and I wandered in a bookstore in Rome. We often visited bookstores and scanned books at random for inspirational passages. Today, one book caught my attention: How to Play Blues Harmonica. Leafing through, I found lessons on the styles of the great masters of the field, and songs from all my favorites: Sonny Boy Williamson, Little Walter, Howlin' Wolf, Jimmy Reed, Slim Harpo, Sonny Terry, Junior Wells, John Mayall, Paul Butterfield, and others. It would be a perfect manual to travel with, but I couldn't afford it. Would I ever find such a book again? I didn't think so. My lower nature overcame me. Cautiously peering to both sides, I discreetly slipped the book under my vest and walked out. When we returned to our campsite on the forest hill, I revealed my treasure to Gary. He smiled in approval. Days later, we visited the Basilica of St. Peter on a day the Pope delivered a sermon. Hours passed as we wandered through Rome and came upon a beautiful church. Sitting on heavy wooden pews intricately carved long ago, we spent a grateful hour meditating and praying in a cavernous sanctuary softly lit by candles. Later, hitchhiking, we reached a busy Roman intersection and Gary proudly unveiled an intricately carved wooden crucifix of Jesus. It took I took it in my hands and marveled at its beauty. "Where did you get this?" I asked. "From the confession booth of that church," Gary replied cheerfully. "What?" I thrust it back to him. "You stole this from the house of God? How could you do such a thing? I'm ashamed of you." Gary's eyes flared. "Monk, who are you to preach to me? Didn't you steal that harmonica book? Don't be hypo- hypocrite. Hypocrite." He was right. I felt ashamed and defeated. I had no right to criticize him, but had to speak my mind. Yes, I stole it, but from a money-making business, not from a holy place. Gary's passions were high. Above the noise of the traffic, he protested. "The church is one of the biggest money-making businesses in the world. They make billions of dollars, while that bookstore is probably owned by religious men struggling to make ends meet." As we argued, a crowd of pedestrians circled around us, and cars stopped to view the conflict. Yes, Pepe, would you like to continue, please?
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna. I strained to speak over the roar of the buses. Maybe you're right, but still we worshipped God in that church. I can't bear that you stole from that place of all places. Please, brother, bring it back. Do this for me. Gary's rage melted into a calm smile. He embraced me and, apologizing, agreed to return the cross. I'm sorry too, Gary. I know I'm wrong, but thank you very much. Gary and I hitchhiked back to the church to return the stolen crucifix. It wasn't until night that we returned to our camp in the woods. We laughed about our dispute, agreeing that it had deepened our connection and proved our loyalty to each other. While lying on my back inside my sleeping bag, I gazed into the stars and fretted. I'm a hypocrite. Was it not hypocrites that nailed Jesus to that crucifix? How dishonest it is to preach but not practice. Breaking the silence, as if reading my mind, Gary said, quote, "Monk, please don't return that harmonica book. Everyone likes the new songs you're playing," unquote. I kept the book for as long as it took to learn as much as I could from it. Just before we left Rome, I went back to the bookstore and slipped the book back on the shelf I'd taken it from. In Rome, as I had in so many other places, I found refuge on a riverbank. Looking across into the Tiber, I reflected on how this river had flowed through the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, and ever since. Generations and civilizations had perished, and the magnificent buildings of Rome had become ruins. But all the while, the Tiber flowed on. Carrying wisdom I longed to know. Observing the current, I pondered my joys, sorrows, and trials while in Italy. I saw the robbery of poor Jim, or benefactor soldier. I remembered the priceless blessing I received in the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore. My thoughts then flowed back to Irene, that sweet angel whom I had deemed an obstacle to my path. In the swishing currents of the Tiber, I heard the words of wisdom spoken by the Franciscan monk in that dark underground chamber. Then, with shame, I recalled my hypocrisy in stealing and then condemning my best friend for doing the same. Through it all, I had felt a divine hand guiding me to invaluable lessons. As the water flowed, I began to contemplate the life of Saint Francis. In his youth, he despised the sight of lepers. But when touched by God's grace, he kissed the hand of a leper in sympathy with a will to serve. A calling awoke in my mind to visit Assisi. Separating from Gary for some days, I made the pilgrimage. Once there, I read stories of St. Francis's life in the very places they were enacted. The son of a wealthy merchant, Francis had served as a soldier as a young man. But in 1205, while praying in the convent of Saint Damiano, Lord Jesus, from the church crucifix, called upon Francis to restore the church in decay. It was a moment of transformation. Committed to a life of self imposed poverty, humility, and devotion, he attracted many to follow. In Saint Damiano's, I passed several days in contemplation on the transformation of Saint Francis. Visiting his childhood home, I saw the closet where his father had imprisoned him for fear that he would renounce the world, and from which Francis tricked his mother into releasing him. I saw the Cathedral of Angels where he began his ministry and where years later he breathed his last breath. I returned to Gary in Rome, taking with me in my heart the inspiration of St. Francis's renunciation, compassion, and ecstasies of spiritual love. Shall I continue, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhu.
From Rome, we hitchhiked to Naples, then on to the legendary city of Pompeii. I was struck by the fact that it had been a thriving township until Mount Vesuvius erupted. Now, centuries later, we walk through the ruins of the ancient civilization, marveling at all that had been excavated from layers of solidified lava. Perfect molds of human bodies were formed in the ashes. Animals, buildings, roads, and hundreds of artifacts were preserved in the hardened lava. I found myself lost in thought. What could we learn from the tragedy of Pompeii? At any moment, disaster can come upon anyone. In our complacency, we fail to grasp the impermanence of all that is material. I thought of the bubonic plague that had ravaged Europe, the atomic bomb that leveled Hiroshima, the earthquakes and fires that had destroyed cities in America. Through the history of mankind, the powers of nature take everything away from us. Why put off seeking the eternal jewel of enlightenment? Now is the time. As Mount Vesuvius had erupted, leaving a civilization in ashes, there had erupted from my heart an exclusive commitment to the path of spirituality, to leave all else in the ashes of my past. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you so much for listening, Prabhu. Mataji Lakshmi Jaya. Would you like to continue, please?
Sure, Mataji. From Pompeii, we hitchhiked to the port town of Brindisi and using the very last of the cash we had managed to hold on to, sailed to the Greek island of Corfu, the ancient Corcyra written about by Homer in the Odyssey. Each day there, I would wander alone onto the mountainside that boomed with olive and fig trees. Looking out over the Ionian Sea, I sat under a pomegranate tree and read the book of Tao, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Bible, eager to learn as much as possible from various teachers. Breathing the fresh Mediterranean air inspired my contemplation. We crossed to the mainland and hitchhiked towards Athens. As we soared along the roadways, I marveled at the unique terrain, language, and customs of Europe. I had come from the American Midwest, and the varieties were mind expanding to me. I gazed through the window and found myself lost in contemplation. All my life, I had been conditioned to interpret reality a certain way, according to the culture in which I was raised. Why was it that we humans seem to have a deep rooted proclivity to feel superior to others, particularly in regard to nationality, race, religion, or social position? We think that our condition is normal and others are strange or inferior. This judgmental pride degenerates us into bigotry or sectarianism, generating hatred, fear, exploitation, and even war. I prayed that my travels would open my mind and provide sympathy for how other cultures viewed life, the world, and God. After reaching Athens, I wrote a letter to my family in suburban Chicago, telling them where I was, of how much the trip had meant to me, and how close I felt to them. I did not have the heart to tell them yet that I didn't want to return to school that fall, that I did not know when I would return. In Athens, Gary and I were shocked to see the police waving automatic machine guns while patrolling the streets. We knew we should sleep at the youth hostel rather than under a tree. But there was a problem. Our meager finances were exhausted. Although youth hostels were cheap, we still could not afford one. So we turned to the practice of many hardcore travelers of the time, donating blood at the government blood bank. The primitive process used then was painful. They strapped us to a table and then drew the blood in large syringes. We almost blacked out. It was a rule that each donor was given a cup of orange juice and had to sit in a waiting room for half an hour after giving blood. Only after seeing that the donor was in stable health did they pay. In the waiting room, biding our time, Gary and I endured the pain in our arms. He grimaced, lamenting, "There must be a better way to make money than this." We looked around the room and noticed a French man with a guitar case in the same agony. A few seats down sat a Swiss boy with a violin case, he too holding his arm. As usual, I carried my harmonica strapped to my belt. We musicians looked at one another and smiled, having the same inspiration. The Swiss boy, it turned out, was trained from childhood as a classical violinist, but as a teen opted to play rock and blues. And the French guitarist was likewise trained in classical flamenco, but converted to folk music. After collecting our blood money, we streamed out into the street and, forming a makeshift band, began to play a wild improvisation of 12-bar blues. A dozen people gathered around and danced. Soon it grew to dozens more. Gary became our rhythm section by dropping a few coins into a borrowed hat and shaking it. So pleased was the audience with our performance that they continually tossed drachmas, the Greek currency, into Gary's hat. As the enthusiasm mounted, we formed a musical procession down the streets of Athens, playing one long song. The crowd skipped along behind. When we stopped at a corner, dozens assembled and the hat overflowed with drachmas. At the end of the first day, we divided our earnings and checked into the youth hostel. By the next morning, we were famous. Wherever we went, crowds of smiling, clapping Greeks gathered around us in a circle. They loved us. We joyously played on, thinking it too good to be true. At one plaza, our music filled the air. Old folks clapped, teenagers danced, children jumped, and mothers swung their babies to the rhythm. Everyone smiled on that sunny afternoon, and the hat overflowed until all of a sudden the crowd abruptly dispersed. The music stopped as machine guns were thrust into our faces. We were arrested and hauled off to the station. There, the police confiscated all the money from the hat and warned us never to commit this crime again. That was the beginning and the end of my career as a professional musician. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for the Devotees. Ankit Prabhu, would you like to continue, please?
Yes, Mataji.
Thank you.
With some funds, we had managed to hide from the police, feeling it was time to find a more peaceful place to cultivate our spirituality. Gary and I paid our fares on a boat to the Isle of Crete, arriving at the port of Line on the Aegean Sea. We rode a bus to the southern coast. There we found a place of wild and rugged beauty. a steep and rocky coast line inaccessible accessible to ships and resplendent with natural springs, gorgeous sandy beaches, mountain goat, and abundant sunshine. We had never seen so many capes. Amazed, we chose one that overlooked the Mediterranean Sea for our residence. This island paradise was a perfect sanctuary for fasting, meditation, and prayers. Before sunrise every morning, I climbed a mountain where I would meditate and pray until sunset. As I looked out over the clear waters of the sea, my thirst for enlightenment intensified like never before. Meanwhile, Gary was down at the seaside, also meditating. After sunset, we would meet back at the cave and break our day-long fast with some plain bread. As we settled down to rest on the stone floor, we shared our realizations of the day. Weeks of contemplation passed into this way. By now, my prayers and meditations had kindled the sparks of my spiritual craving into a blazing fire. From the lonely mountaintop, I witnessed everything in my life evaporating into that fire. I felt like I was being consumed by my yearning for God like one possessed. But fate was leading me to a crossroad. One road would allow me to remain the person I thought I was, an American boy from a particular family, expected to go to college and get a degree, who had joined the counterculture. Another road would lead me into a realm where everything had to change. I was afraid. I knew I was making a choice that would completely change my life, but nothing could stop me. I didn't know where destiny was leading me, but I knew that if I were to move forward in my journey, I would find a whole new life with a whole new identity. I had to leave everything else behind. The day was ending, the soft red orb of the sun dropping into the mouth of sea. I cast a wheel of golden light over the waves, which swayed and danced to its touch. The mountains of the coast radiated gold. The dome of his sky above me glowed pink, tangerine, and lilac. And then, from my heart, a sweet but commanding voice called, "Go to India." Why India? I thought, it's another world so far away. I know so little about it. I had next to no money and little idea of what to expect, but I believed this was the voice of my Lord calling for me. At other times, I had felt the presence of God or felt guilt that I had behaved in ways to separate myself from God. But this was different. This was a silent voice that resonated from my heart. I was convinced that it was not my voice or my mind. No, this was God answering my prayers for direction. In the twilight, I descended from the mountain top towards the Mediterranean, immersed in my own sea of introspections. I felt each step I took was bringing me closer to my destination. As I climbed into our cave, I found Gary there in meditation. Ah, lone candle flickered, shedding yellow light on the walls and ceiling of our shelter. I sat on the stone floor at the mouth of the cave and gazed into the darkening sky. Then broke the silence. Gary, something amazing happened to me today. His eyes widened. He exclaimed, "Really, monk? Something amazing happened to me, too. Tell me." Gary gazed out at the stairs. At sunset, a voice spoke to me. Incredible. What did the voice say? It said, he whispered, to go to Israel. My mouth dropped. What? Shivering in suspense, I leaned closer. I couldn't believe what I had heard. Where? I said, go to Israel? Don't you believe me? I braced myself on the cave floor. I also heard voice as the sun was setting. Gary burst out, amazing. We will go to Israel together. But Gary, I whispered, my heart pounding. The voice told me, go to India. India. Gary elbed, elbed. He fell silent. Neither of us could speak a word. Silence rose between us, and I looked into the galaxy of stars, to the heavens. I whispered, yes, I am willing. The cave was now dark except for the flicker of a single candle. I turned my I turned to my dearest friend. Tomorrow I will be gone, maybe forever. Neither of us spoke for a long moment, and then Gary broke the silence. India is separated by the deserts of the Middle East by thousands of miles. Agitated shadows from the candle flame danced on the walls. The passage in is dangerous, even deadly. You have nothing, monk. This is not a spiritual quest. This is suicide. Please wait. Why not come with me to Israel and make some money? Then we will go to India together. Minutes passed. I considered, but that inner call would not relent. Gary, I believe this to be the calling of God. I can't delay. Worry washed across his face. How will you get there, monk? I believe if I just itch toward the east someday, I will reach that land where the answer to my prayers awaits me. He understood my heart. A tear trickled down his cheek, wetting his beard. You have to follow your destiny, he whispered. I will pray for you. As the candle flickered its last light, I lay on the cave's floor for rest. I the quiet of the light, I gazed out into the limitless stars, my mind swirling in anticipation. The sun came up and I prepared to leave. Gary came to the bus stop on the side of a country road to see me off. We stood among a few farmers waiting for the bus, feeling the sadness of separation beginning. The brotherly love we shared was rare. From childhood, we had passed together through the mysterious transitions of life. Together, we had gazed up at the stars from our homes in Highland Park, from the hippie heavens of California, from our college in Florida, and from many places in Europe. We had pondered why humans hate and kill and opposed the Vietnam War and the treatment of African Americans. We dreamed of civil rights, of a world free of haters and full of music. In our recent travels, we grew even more dependent on each other's friendship and support. But now the fateful moment had come. As the rickety bus approached, I wished to give Gary a gift, the most meaningful thing I had. Contemplating how best to express my feeling, an idea flashed through my mind. I took off my old black vest and handed it to him. I had worn it every day for years. To those who knew me, it was an inseparable part of my identity. It was also my most precious possession. I wished, Gary exclaimed. The two of us were like leaves carried by the wind, neither knowing where or how the wind would blow us. We shook hands and then embraced with emotion climbing into the throat. I said, "Someday, if it's God's will, maybe we will meet again." I found a seat on the bus, and as it crawled forward, jostling over ditches and potholes, I looked back. Gary stood alone. I knew that giving him my waist singled the setting of my identity, past and present. I decided also to relinquish the nickname, move and use my given name, Richard. From the point on, the journey to unknown India, I felt would be a journey to reclaim my eternal identity.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for reading today.
Shall we pause here, Mataji, and
Yes, of course.
share? I can share something.
Please.
There was one photo of Gary with Maharaj at GEV. It was recently they met. I don't know if they met previously also, maybe they did. But Gary visited GEV and there was a picture. I also wanted to share in the previous chapter or previous section, we read about Saint Francis of Assisi. Maharaj was contemplating about him. And recently, I think 2 years ago, devotees in Italy acquired that cave of Saint Francis of Assisi and they offered it to Maharaj. So it is now, it's some devotee purchased it, somehow acquired it, and they had kirtan there inside. And now it's locked, and the keys were given to Maharaj, but I think Maharaj kept it there. But now it belongs to Maharaj.
Wow.
We had pictures of that cave.
If you have, could you kindly share any links or
Yeah, yeah.
pictures or anything? Because
I
I
have
haven't
those
seen it.
pictures.
I'm I was always like, since I heard about St. Francis, I always wanted to know more about his life. And here we were reading, about um, how even his father loved him just for him not to leave material world, and how like still this passion he couldn't just leave it, so he followed his heart. It's
Yeah, I
just
didn't know about
amazing.
him. I had no idea about him. But I read only when that cave was given to Maharaj. I found out. But you knew about him and you had heard.
Yeah, I've heard like other stories about St. Francis before as well, like there was like one, I cannot remember the story by heart right now, so I'm not going to try to go into details, but his humility as well, and so many things that he've done
There
to
was,
spread the glories of the Lord.
I don't know, there were other Saint Francises, or was it this one mostly? There was one Saint Francis in India also visited. I don't know if it was this devotee who.
I heard always about the same one.
Okay, I need to look up when I think there was one Saint Francis in who visited India also.
Mm,
But I'll share the picture. Maharaj doing
That's,
kirtan in the cave.
that's so amazing.
I mean, this cave in the island of Crete also is also amazing. That it's another turning point in Maharaj's life and for our lives. that was the church in Italy, and now this cave. This cave is, I guess, a bigger turning point that Maharaj goes to India, and it's probably that cave is still there. I'm sure Maharaj can still find it if he goes there. Maybe he went there maybe sometime also already. But if devotees find out, perhaps it should be somehow preserved or marked.
Do you know where is it located in Italy?
In the cave, this in Greece, there are many islands there, right? There's a famous island of
It's in Greece, it's not in Italy?
no, this one is in Greece. So I'm not talking about the cave of Saint Francis. I'm talking about this cave where Maharaj and Gary sat and lived.
I
Yeah,
see.
this cave where Maharaj lived there and had the realization, and they spoke and split, going to Israel and India. So that cave is in Greece, right? And I'm sure Maharaj can find that because he lived there for weeks if he goes there. Anyway, Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you for sharing. Mataji Lakshmi Vijay, you want to share something too?
Mataji, these entire narrations are explaining how deep Maharaj was. I mean, yeah, his connection with he wanted to revive his connection with God. So all the meditations and contemplations and his decision makings, this is all amazing. What kind of personality he is. It's so. So I'm for a 19-year-old to have this much contemplation and realization. It is not. I mean, I don't think it's possible to everybody. He is special. He's not ordinary.
Yes, it's like on his own. It's not like he had a teacher telling him what to do, right? Or he had like one scripture. Yes, he was learning from others, but he had all this like dedication and inner like feeling of what is right, and how he was, taking all these vows so quickly, all just by himself. This is also amazing to me.
Right, it's instant decisions.
Yeah, for the rest of the life. It's not just
For
like
the rest of the life, yeah.
it's not like we're trying to take one vow of offering a lamb during the month. At least one thing doing regularly. This is like something for the rest of the life. It's very serious. It shows how that he was practicing, and definitely how serious he was in his previous life, and now he's just picking it up, and yeah, how we are fortunate to be under his shelter, to have his association through his books and through his lectures, and even see him in person. And yeah, and here in US we also have, I guess, even more fortune because we're able to see him even closer than in India. Right? In India, like you were saying, Shreyas Prabhu, like thousands of devotees trying to go on a pilgrimage, and here we're able to see him so close.
Yes, Mataji. We are fortunate.
So I'm glad I came to US. I had also a long way, maybe not like Guru Maharaj, but I had to live in Malta for 13 years, and then I had to come here, and never planned to really leave Russia. But Krishna guided me, and I found out here about Vedic knowledge. Ankit Prabhu, do you have anything to share with us?
Actually, Mataji, I was very eager to read this book. First, I was heard some YouTube lectures about Journey Home, but I didn't read. And thank you, you and Shreyas Prabhu, for arranging this weekly book reading. and that is my favorite part when Maharaj started to come India. So I am very happy to read with all of you. Thank you very much for arranging this book reading.
Hare Krishna, everything is by Guru Maharaj's mercy and other devotees. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your enthusiasm. Dear devotees, I wanted to share one little thing today about my personal life. But since I meet you now every week, it's something very important for me. I also wish to share. So I just got engaged.
Congratulations.
So yes, now looking for a good date for the marriage. So please bless me on this way that I can be a good wife, that I can, do my duties properly and go through all the difficulties that this path can bring.
It's great news, Mataji. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, Mataji, very glad to hear. Wish you all the best, Mataji.
We're going through all the phases of life together now.
Yes, I'm grateful we are.
Very well.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः अनन्तकोटि वैष्णववृन्द की जय
Jai.
हरे कृष्ण
Hare
जय
Krishna.
जय शुकुपाद की जय
Jai.
See you next week. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.